Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first set of breakout sessions. We hope you enjoyed your morning break sponsored by ENSMED. My name is Nathan Davis, and I will be your room host for the first two breakout sessions of Track 2, Rare Activism. We are excited that this track is also being live streamed, and I would like to welcome our remote attendees to the session. As a reminder, we have a mobile app available, so be sure to download that and check out some of our highlighted features and the live Q&A session where you can post questions to the speakers and we can ask them at the end. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our first session, the bottom line on giving research grants. Please join me in welcoming Tony Ferrandino, founder of Drew Michael Taylor Foundation, and Annette Baker, president of Children's Tumors Foundation.
Thanks, Nate. So it's Drew's Hope Research Foundation. There was just a mix-up. Not a big deal. Thank you, Nate. So I'm not sure. The app is great. Everyone should be downloading it. So what is Batten's disease? Batten's disease is a very rare genetic disorder that happens in 1 or 2 kids for every 100,000 births. My son Drew and my wife Katie is here as well. Had CLN2 Batten's disease. It's part of the 7,000 rare diseases that we're all here for. And we are lucky because we have a diagnosis and we know what we are up against. And just from seeing a lot of people here and meeting a lot of people over the years, it's better to have a diagnosis than to not know, because the 2 years where we were searching for a diagnosis was probably the worst 2 years of our life, knowing that there was something wrong with our child, but we just couldn't figure it out. So for all those that are still searching, that's, keep up the fight. So this is our son Drew. Like I said, he had CLN2 Batten's disease, and basically he was normal up until 3 years old. And then on his 3rd birthday, started having seizures. He had a febrile seizure the night of his 3rd birthday party. And it was kind of explained away as a febrile seizure. Gave him Tylenol, didn't think anything of it. He did have a slight speech delay. 2 weeks later, he started having drop seizures. Went down to Philadelphia Hospital, and we were diagnosed with epilepsy, and that kind of started our 2-year journey of different seizure medicines and our son losing skills. And each time losing skills, was kind of just described as a side effect of the seizure medicine, and we weren't really sure what it was. So our story is very similar to so many other families that have CLN2 Batten's disease, so it's good to tell our story so other people are educated about it. And we received the diagnosis January 30, 2007. At that time, there was only one clinical trial going on. It was with stem cells in Portland, Oregon, and that was probably the best chance for our son at life at that particular time. And I remember at that particular time, there was a lot of conversations around stem cells in China, and they were doing a lot of research, and nothing that you can technically get your hands on like you can in the U.S. And I remember speaking to a doctor in China, basically saying, what is the procedure that you're doing? And for $10,000, they would implant 10 million stem cells into the spinal cord. For 20,000 stem cells, or for $20,000, it was 20 million stem cells. And the question as a novice was, well, what is better scientifically? So what should we be doing? And at the time I worked in New York, and just with trying to find out as much as we can about the disease, threw out as much nets as we possibly could, trying to educate ourselves. I was able to meet and spend some time with Jeffrey Maklis, at the time was the director of stem cell research at Harvard. He invited me up to his lab, and I remember thinking on the train going up there, what am I possibly going to speak to the director of stem cell research at Harvard about? And he was just is a great person, and taught me about stem cells and taught me why we really wanted to go for the trial in Portland, Oregon that we were doing here in the U.S., and that the science behind what was going on in China really wasn't, where we should be focusing our efforts. In that time, though, I would say, so time goes on, we were able to get Drew into the clinical trial. Other families were diagnosed, and we personally know other people that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars going to do, research in China, spending a lot of money that probably could have been better focused here in the U.S. if they had a Jeffrey Maklis in their life and took some, I'm not gonna, everybody makes decisions on their own kid, and I totally get that. If you don't have a cure in front of you, you'll do anything. We know that. But it just, so my talk today really is about our journey and how we started our foundation and some of the mistakes we've made, and really, in the end, where we are now, and just, mistakes that we've made being out there, just like, any newly diagnosed person is with a rare disease. We know what it's like. And, when we were diagnosed, January 30th in 2007, we knew we needed to do something. We were to the end of the internet in terms of looking for things. We found the BDSRA, which is the Batten's Disease Research Organization. We called them. We spoke to a gentleman, Lance Johnston. He was our first contact with the disease, and at that particular time, all we knew was that we wanted to find a cure. We definitely underestimated the need for support and for a place to go to help us with just, the other aspects of the disease outside of trying to find a cure. We started, it seemed like the thing to do at the time was to start a 501c3, and we did. And we started Drew's Hope Research Foundation, and, we spent, probably $2,000 or $3,000 getting it going. And that was with people that helped us pro bono to get the foundation started. So, I would just say, for all of you that are thinking about starting a foundation on your own, really give some thought in terms of, is there another nonprofit out there that could be providing the same, service that we're looking to do? What is your mission statement? What do you want to try to accomplish? Is it just to find a cure? Is it trying to be more support? Do you have the support network in place to run fundraisers? If you're going to start a 501c3 and try to do fundraisers, do you have a huge support network in place to help you? Because, a big part of, our disease was taking care of our son Drew. And that's all encompassing for your family, and you're trying to keep normalcy for the rest of your family. It could be very difficult. So add on top of that, actually trying to orchestrate fundraisers and, raise money, and where you're going to put that money is a whole different issue, and that's a large part of what I'm going to speak about soon. So it's a big effort. And then try to be realistic. How long are you going to be in this journey of trying to raise money to cure the disease? And, everybody's answer is different, and there's nothing wrong with whatever your answer is. You have to take care of your family, and you have to take care of your affected person. If it's, you can do so much, that's fine. Whatever the answer is, that's fine. Everybody's different. So just a couple things that, think about before you start a 501c3. You know, in terms of the actual research, there was no shortage in terms of where to spend the money. If you have money, there's no shortage in terms of, you know, scientists that would, you know, do some research for you. I honestly consider our disease, Batten's disease, very lucky in the sense that we have great researchers that have spent so much time with me and so many others educating us in terms of what Batten's disease is. You know, I'm not a PhD. Thematically, I can understand some concepts, but I don't know what science has been done. I could read a research paper. Doesn't make sense to me. But I've spent many hours, a lot of times in the bars after the conferences, actually trying to understand the science. And like I said, we do have, Batten's disease does have some great researchers. So we're lucky. So what we did was we joined forces with the BDSRA, our national organization, and utilized the infrastructure that they have in place to help us in directing the funds that we raise for Drew's Hope, you know, to utilize and co-fund projects with the BDSRA. So we've been doing that for probably 4 years now. The slide's a little bit off, but basically it's been 4 years and 5 or 6 projects. And again, we utilize the infrastructure that they have in place, and we co-fund projects with the BDSRA. Because again, we don't totally, you know, admittedly, we don't get all the scientific data points. We don't know what's been done before, what hasn't been done before, what is, you know, good research versus bad research. So we really rely on the infrastructure in place that the BDSRA has. These are just some of the projects that we've co-funded with the BDSRA and others over the years. And then, you know, this gets into the infrastructure that the BDSRA has that, you know, when you look at this, as a person that is trying to deal with a terminally ill child, which, by the way, our son passed in September of 2014, and it was, you know, so September is obviously a difficult month for us. But so when you're dealing with that and trying to keep normalcy for your family, the infrastructure that other organizations have that you could piggyback on is very welcoming. So, you know, the BDSRA's grant process starts in November, sending out, you know, basically letters of intent to 650, 700 different organizations looking for research projects. They get back those research projects in one-page documents. We probably get between 25 to 50 letters of intent. They're reviewed by the BDSRA Board of Directors. They probably choose, I don't know, 6 to 10 different proposals that will ask for more information. In the June and July timeframe, we'll have a board meeting, and the board will decide, well, the scientific reviewers will score all of the projects that we choose, and we'll try to narrow it down to 6 to 10 research projects that they want to potentially fund. In June, July, we'll have a board meeting, and then the projects will be granted. You know, and then Drew's Hope will piggyback on top of the BDSRA in terms of what projects are going to be granted, along with some other foundations that are here too. Noah's Hope and such. So, you know, and this is another part. You know, like even when the contract negotiations start, I mean, we really, as a small organization, don't have the expertise to know how to negotiate a contract with a university, or what's customary versus what's not. And the BDSRA has the years of experience to do that. So, you know, that's another point really rely on them as opposed to, you know, potentially having to speak to an attorney and look at the contract that you're signing and really understanding it. So, over the years, the BDSRA has granted over just under $7 million to 100 different research organizations. We've piggybacked on probably a couple $100,000 of that. You know, it just, for us, it works. It's very easy when you're starting out to kind of reinvent the wheel, and we've seen this with other organizations. You know, you're diagnosed and you want to do something, so you want to do it yourself and control everything, but really you should be, there's powers in numbers, and, you know, looking at other organizations that are potentially doing the same thing as you are is very powerful. So in the end, what would we have done differently? Again, the BDSRA is our national organization, so we're lucky in that we did have a structured national organization. Probably, you know, the BDSRA also evolved, so it wasn't what it was, you know, 7 years ago as it is today. It's much more structured. But, you know, in many of these organizations, you can make it what you want, and they're moldable. And if you know, get involved and meet people, it's much more, it's a lot easier to join an organization with other people that have some infrastructure in place than to kind of start your own and make the same mistakes that other people are making. You know, if they don't have a national, or if they don't have a local chapter, maybe there is a national organization. If they don't have a local chapter, maybe you look to start a local chapter and be part of it. So basically what we do is we raise funds as Drew's Hope locally, and we funnel those funds and we piggyback on different projects that the BDSRA has. That's really it, and we're going to take questions at the end if that's okay. And I really appreciate you guys being here, and I'm just blown away at how many great, smart people are here. So it's really, really cool. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. And it's about the force of connections. And the presentation that I would like to do, I'm the President and Chief Scientific Officer of the Children's Tumor Foundation. It's in that same spirit of the force of connections. Now comes my IT. Okay. So first of all, who are we? The Children's Tumor Foundation is we're headquartered in New York City. We're focused on a rare disorder called neurofibromatosis. I will explain you in a minute what NF is. As you can see, we are four-star navigator, pretty financially solid, with a rather large management team. We've invested quite a lot of money in developing new research models. And one of the important things is that we really consider our patients as partners. Now first, what is NF? NF is a genetic disorder. It's a loss of function disorder in the neurofibromatosis genes, NF1, NF2, and schwannomatosis. The main characteristics, as these patients, they develop tumors that grow on their nerves, but they also develop learning disabilities. They can develop cancer, as you can imagine, depending on where these tumors grow on the nerves. These people can have all kinds of problems, from deafness, blindness, pain, excruciating pain. And as you can see on this picture, the manifestations are extremely variable. The majority of the patients look like you and I, but they have a lot of problems. They have a lot of brain tumors, tumors in their body, and then you can have people that are more visibly affected by NF. And there is no treatment for NF. So what are, I thought maybe to quickly list, what are typical challenges that patients with NF are suffering from? And I think, and I put between brackets rare disease, because also just listening to Tony, the journey that so many patients go through of being misdiagnosed for so many years, so misdiagnosis is a big problem. Patients are in general, in the traditional approach, treated as victims, like, you know, the doctor, please help me approach. There is a lack of knowledge around what patients need. The tissue is scarce, especially in the rare disease space. There are few researchers that work on NF or on rare disease, I think we can say. There's not really a lot of data. There are often now no models, and models are important if you want to develop treatments for these patients. There's a lack of endpoints in clinical trial sites. Funding is limited generally, like what Tony just was talking about. The market is often unknown, and as we know, to get pharmaceutical companies attracted to a new disease area, you need to make sure that they understand that you actually can survive if you work on this rare disorder. And pharma and biotech are not always interested. Sometimes they are, not always, but I'm sure that the pharma companies that are present at this conference are selected to be interested in rare disorder. So what has the foundation be done? CTF has invested in a number of things to cover some of the challenges, and probably for those of you who saw, some of these were in italic and some of them were in straight letters. This is not a mistake, and it will become clear very quickly. So for the patients, we've created a clinic network of 43 clinics, an NF registry where our patients are the drivers. They enter all the information. We have educational brochures for all the manifestations, symposia. That's all driven by the patients. We have grants and contracts comparable to the grants that Tony was just alluding to in all the three areas, both basic science, translational, and clinical research. We've created a biobank to make sure that the tissue that is so scarce can at least be made available to both profit and non-profit. We have created a data hub in which we have over 6,000 data sets now. And we have created a comprehensive pharma kit that I'm going to present this afternoon at 2 o'clock at the Partnering Investors Forum to see whether pharma could be attracted to our platform that we have created. And we've also created something that is called RAINS, which stands for Response Evaluation in Neurofibromatosis and Schwannomatosis. That was, in fact, really driven by clinicians who want to identify diagnostic criteria and endpoints to develop drugs in clinical trials. So here come the italic ones. The patients treated as victims, few researchers working on NF, not really enough data, and funding is limited. And in fact, what I would like to do is highlight a little bit what kind of strategy we used to address these three problems. So first of all, when we said few researchers, we've developed collaborative consortia, and I will come back to that in a minute. Our flagship is Synodos, with one of our Synodos scientists in the room today, just to show you that this is real. We have really engaged with our patients as partners. Our patients are not victims. They drive our research agenda. They're really highly engaged in what is happening in the foundation. They're sitting on our review panels. I mean, they're really part of the picture because they are the drivers of the whole process. And the limited funding, and just to come back to what Tony just said, it is that collaborative funding. Try to come together, because alone you can only do so much. Together you can do a lot. So during the presentation, I will highlight three examples. The first one is Synodos, the second one is our patient engagement program, and the last one is what I call the MEK storyboard, and you will see what I mean by that. So, number one, Synodos. So in a traditional drug development or research and development approach, typically what happens is that all of these little blocks, you know, you start with the patients, you understand what the biology is, why is somebody sick. The next thing is what they call translational science. That means, is it possible to identify a drug to treat these patients? Can we identify a drug? Then comes the clinical research. Is that drug actually working in the patients? And then if everything goes well, that drug goes to the market. So that's a very typical R&D pipeline. Now, as you can see, all these blocks are different in color because all these different entities are pretty siloed. So at the foundation, we said, stop. We don't want to do this sequentially anymore because we think this is too slow. We have everything in the same color here because we broke the walls. And if you could show the little video, because I think the video is going to give you in a second what I mean by this.
SYNODOS is a team of NF experts initiated, sponsored, and managed by the Children's Tumor Foundation. Researchers with multiple areas of expertise collaborate to answer big NF questions, from what are the root causes of NF to how to get consistent and better drug treatments. The traditional way of making discoveries is linear. A single scientist works to uncover a piece of information. He asks a question, then through trial and error, searches for an answer, while the rest of the research community waits, sometimes for years, to benefit from his findings. But SYNODOS is more than a single expert. SYNODOS scientists are multidisciplinary. They share their results even before they are published. They integrate their information into a continuum of knowledge and work together to discover unforeseen patterns in their data. It's the power of a team, and researchers believe in it. Consortia like SYNODOS have proven to accelerate the pace of groundbreaking research for cancer. CTF first created SYNODOS for NF2. 12 labs were brought together to discover better treatments for NF2 patients. Promising new clinical trials developed directly from this research will bring us closer than ever to a cure for NF2. Because of the success of SYNODOS for NF2, CTF launched SYNODOS for NF1 and SYNODOS for schwannomatosis. These teams will revolutionize the field of knowledge of these complex disorders and open the door to new treatments. SYNODOS: collaboration, connection, knowledge. It's the best chance we have at solving neurofibromatosis.
Thank you. And just to highlight why we so much believe in this and why we have expanded this from one team very carefully in NF2 in 2014 to now having teams on all different conditions. Because we have now new drugs for NF2 that we're progressing to the clinic in less than 3 years. We have new NF1 pig models, and Jill is part of that team. Jill, can you stand up for a second? So Jill is the principal investigator of Iowa. She has developed with multiple labs new pig models for NF1 who are really important to drive new drug discovery. We have new NF1 low-grade glioma targets, and we have a strategy. We just started a schwannomatosis pain SYNODOS consortium. So the second example, patient engagement. We are nurturing our NF community, but we don't need to nurture them. We need to calm them down sometimes. They have, as you can see, this is our Volunteer Leadership Council. There's about 150 very active, I would call them activists, to sponsor research and also to support the NF community. They have created all kinds of Facebook support groups. They organize the NF Forum. They've created NF Heroes. They're designing T-shirts for us. They're our spokespeople in the field, and they're an extremely strong support network for patients with NF. We have our NF advocates who are going on the Hill to advocate for NF research. It rains proclamations during NF Awareness Month in May, and we have also the Shine a Light, which is now a worldwide effort where people light up all their buildings, from including the Niagara Falls, and the Big Ben was lit up by in blue and green during the NF Awareness Month. So as you can see, our patients are extremely outspoken. But they're not just outspoken and advocating, they're really part of our research agenda. They set the research priorities. For example, for schwannomatosis, the pain was driven by the patients. When the researchers said we have to shrink the schwannomatosis tumors, the patients said, no, you have to get rid of our pain. And now we have a pain schwannomatosis. So just to give you an idea of how much our patients are really involved in setting the agenda. They joined the registry. They're full members of all the CTF review committees, and they really play a very active role now. So now within the range, the clinicians have invited the patients to be part of quality of life measures for endpoints, for approval criteria. They're part of that. When we rolled out a question about the biobank, that it would be great that our patients, if they could donate their tissue to NF research, we have 30 people lined up who said, I'm donating my body to NF research. So I mean, we have this community that really understands research, and our community that is very active also in advocating that research, how important research is. And now we're building what we call the PhD program. We call it the Patient Help Doctors program, that is led by Trace Ann Rose, who was our patient engagement director. And I would love to collaborate and make this a broader thing across the rare disease community, because I think a lot of what we're doing here, we are more than happy to collaborate with all of you, and I think it would be great to really build a community of engaged patients across all rare disease areas. The last one is the MEK storyboard, and that is really coming back to Tony's point of how important it is for funders to come together and not try to do things in isolation. So first of all, let me say what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. This is what we accomplished together across funders. So MEK is one of the important targets in NF. We are, for the moment, in a registration trial with the MEK inhibitor. And as you can see, the shrinkage of the tumor, and it's not one patient, this is another one. And let's go spectacular. Just to see what you can do together, right? So here comes the slide that you're not supposed to read, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. You can read it, I'm more than happy to give it to you. But this is kind of the history of all the MEK inhibitors, or a couple of the most important MEK inhibitors that are out there, right? Multiple companies are working on different MEK inhibitors. And here are the funders. So CTF, CDMRP, which is the NF program from the Department of Defense, NIH, which everybody knows, and NTAP, which is a friend organization who is also a major funder in NF. And we came together around the table and we said, okay, who's funding what? And if you can see, the only thing you have to see here are the color coding of the little boxes. And I don't know exactly if I can, yeah. So you see here, this is where CTF was active. This was done together with the NIH. This is again done together with the NIH. The NIH has been very strong in the early basic research funding. CTF again, CTF together with NTAP. So you see, in fact, here, NIH together with CDMRP. So basically, the reason why we can go fast is because everybody has a role. And everybody plays a unique role, and we sit at the table. And we are really rolling this out now, what we call the MEK storyboard. It's not the success of one of us. It's the success of that collaboration. Oh, sorry. And just to give you an idea also about numbers of grants. So what Tony was talking about is these grants, right, that are given out for research. And if you look at this, so Salvo La Rosa, who is the VP research, he did the analysis of how the grants were in fact handed out. And if you look at this, so these are the size of the bubble is the grant size, right? And then here the colors are the different funders. So if you see, we were funding early with a little bit of money, right? Whereas the NIH was really funding with the big dollars, which is not surprising. We came in here, we developed a lot of that preclinical model, so here our bubbles get a little bit bigger, but we have mainly been funding seed grants and then invested in the preclinical model. So for example, the MEK was demonstrated by the preclinical consortium as, yes, this is an important target in NF, and then all the big ones really helped us bring this drug quickly to the clinic. So in conclusion, our experience is that you can get treatments faster to the patients if researchers come together, share all their data very early. Your patients join in as partners, and the funders really strategically co-fund. That, I think, is the main lesson that we have learned over the years. So with that, I would like to thank you, and Tony and I would take any questions. So for the moment, our first mission at the foundation was really to get the first drug approved for NF. Because as long as you don't have a drug approved, it's difficult. It's difficult to flirt if you have nothing to offer. That's my simplistic. So basically what we did is we did everything for free up to now. But now we have built that integrated platform for pharma to come at the table. And now I really would like to discuss and say, like, okay, if you are getting interested in NF, what would you be willing to put on the table for this, right? The platform, which is the biobank, the registry, the preclinical consortium, the endpoints, I mean, you name it, is a lot of money. It's a couple of $1 million a year for us. So that, of course, we would like to start negotiating now with pharmaceutical companies. What would they be willing to put on the table here? With our academic community, we give them money. We don't charge anybody, right? That's really, and the research community has been very different than I first thought. They are willing to share unpublished data right away. The problem that the academic institutions have is their career depends on how many papers they have, right? And I think we have to recognize that. And if we really want academic institutions and academic researchers to behave different, we have to help them. We have to tell them that, okay, we will do the fundraising for you if you are willing to share your data. And I think it's really a partnership. I'm really a big believer in partnership. I may be romantic about that, but it has worked. It really has worked.
And you have been able to compel your industry
No, with pharma we're very early days. So the main systems that we have set up now is with the academic researchers. We have, for example, all the tests that we have done, the foundation has paid for that. So the only thing we asked companies, if they have drugs that matter to NF, that they would give us, through some kind of material transfer agreement, access to their drugs, which is big as a first step. We're really building these partnerships up, right? And a lot of it is trust building. Build trust with the organization you're working with. Build trust with the academic centers you're working with, that you want to do the right thing, and you would be surprised how both academic centers and now I have the feeling even with for-profit, how they are willing to come to the table if you are honest and integer about what you're trying to do. And the patients play an enormous role here. Do not ignore your patients. Your patients drive a lot of your research agenda, and they play an incredible role in getting things done.
1 second. We have a microphone because it's live stream, so.
Tony, my question is for you, and if it's too specific, I would love to talk to you offline. I'm in the very early stages. I must sit on the board of directors of a foundation of a disease that was diagnosed, or it was actually discovered only a couple of years ago. So we're looking at about 250 patients worldwide. We've started the foundation. I would love to collaborate, but I think we are the international foundation. You know, we're the ones. How did you get grant money from, did you get grant money so then you could be a grantor as well?
So the funds that Drew's Hope has raised have all been just from us doing fundraisers ourselves, locally within the community.
And you're doing like silent auctions and bake sales and those kind of things?
Casino nights are a big one every year.
Okay.
So that's really no grant money. The BDSRA has grant money, they've received grant money, but we do not.
Okay.
So basically it's been just us doing fundraisers.
Just the grassroots efforts, and then you're donating directly to your national organization?
Correct.
Okay.
Collaborating on, projects that, their scientific board has deemed, reasonable, and so, yeah.
Okay.
So you're at the early stages, and you're just trying to pull people together and trying to find people, and
yeah.
I would imagine that now, so you said you do have a diagnosis, though?
Oh, yeah, we have a very clear diagnosis.
Right.
It was discovered in 2012 through whole genome sequencing. And so, we are absolutely at the early. So any advice that you might have for me, I would love to have 5 minutes of your time afterward.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Hi, this is a question for Tony. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your insight through this process. Our organization has done one grant cycle, and it was I think if I were to put it nicely, it was a real learning curve. And one of the things that I had the biggest issues with were to get the reviewers on the committee, because our community, our research community is so small, you know, and it feels like if we got specific people as reviewers, it would present a conflict of interest in terms of the review of the grant. Can you share a little bit about what your experience has been in the whole choosing of reviewers? Because 20 scientific reviewers sounds like a lot to me, and that's great. So if you could share anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is it's orchestrated by the BDSRA, so I don't have all the intimate details of that, but I agree with you that sometimes there does seem like an inherent conflict of interest, if you will, in terms of who's reviewing versus the finite group of researchers out there. But I would just, yeah, I'd have to take it offline and try to give you a little more clarity on that.
I'll reach out to you later on. Thank you so much.
I can maybe add a little thing there. So I think this is a problem of all the rare disease communities, that in fact you have very few researchers and you become very quickly conflicted. So what we did in collaboration with our review board is we said, okay, if this is a mouse study for NF, you just need a mouse expert, right? Whether that is a mouse expert in NF or a mouse expert outside NF, that almost doesn't matter. You need that expert. If it's a neuroscience thing, you need a good neuroscientist. And what we have done is we have, in fact, rebuilt our review boards, and 90% of our reviewers are outside the NF field, but experts in specific things. So when the grants come in, our review board really assigns the grants to saying, okay, this is a neuroscience, this is a mouse study, this is a whatever other study, and then those reviewers are reviewing the grants. But those are not part of the people that are, in fact, waiting to get the money. And that has helped a lot in objectivizing the review process.
So then that's a lot of it. That's great insight. Thank you so much. So just the last thing I'll say, and I'll stop talking. You know, as somebody that's a representative of a patient foundation who may not have a lot of interaction with the academic field, like what would be a typical process of reaching out to somebody that is, say, a mouse expert, but not necessarily, and just sending them an email being like, hey, I read a paper and you're a mouse expert. Would you like to review my grant? Like how, I'm just trying to envision that process.
No, I see your point. I think we should talk offline.
Okay,
I think there is
sorry for all
No, absolutely
questions.
not. I think there comes in the need for collaboration across all the, that's where I could see an opportunity, but I don't want to immediately offer help to everybody. But
right.
I think that is where I think a need would be for kind of an umbrella review board of scientists that are there and that can help you guys assign the grants to the right people. I think that is where these umbrella organizations really play an important role to help you guys assigning these things, because it's a job and you need to really know the different things. And if you have some friendly scientists, and there are a lot out there that are willing to help you just navigate the research community. But I think that is where I could see a huge role for an umbrella organization to pick that up and say, you know, there is kind of an external review board of some scientists that help organizations that get grants to assign them to the right.
I think that's a great idea.
So I know I'm at a global genes conference, but NORD provides some of those umbrella services. They have a platform where you can give your foundation's money to them and pay them a relatively small administrative fee, and they'll run the grant proposal, the grant process for you. You do give up some control.
That's exactly it.
But
That's great.
It's worked for us. We've done about $500,000 or $600,000 of grants through NORD.
That's exactly what I was. Okay, great. So there you go.
Hi. Outside of the carrot of grant money, do you have suggestions for convincing researchers to share their data before publication. We have a network, and we all agree verbally that it's the right thing to do, but it's still not being done in the U.S. and then in Europe as well. So any suggestions would be really
I think
appreciated.
What we have to understand is, if you want people to behave different, you have to create an incentive that makes them behave different, right? So the incentive that the NIH is working on now, that I heard, is that until now it was all about your paper versus my paper, and whether you would get the money or not get the money. That was your career track. Right or wrong, that was the way it was done. The NIH now is recreating, because they saw that that was an issue and that was hampering somehow the research advancement. They are now, what I heard, rethinking the idea of sharing your data immediately. And it's in fact the use of data by other people that will define your career path. Are we there yet? I don't think so. But I think it's great that people start thinking about it, and I think we will get there, but it's going to be a journey. We just need to make sure that our researchers that are really sharing their data will not end up without a lab, right? Because that is the risk that we run, is that the nicest researchers that are sharing their data and share everything, will end up not be funded anymore. So it's a tricky thing, but it's really a question of talking and figuring out why are people not sharing? These are not bad people. It's a question of understanding why they can't share their data. And then the question is, okay, I understand your problem. What can we do? What can we do to overcome this?
I have a couple just questions about logistics of things. We are also a brand new organization, just over 50 diagnoses. It was started in 2012. The first one was 2012. So we're kind of in those beginning stages as well too. I'm wondering what the amount of grants, is it always in the millions, or are there some smaller, like tens of thousands, for smaller things? And then our syndrome doesn't have a carrot. We don't have a drug that's going to fix anything, the research that we're looking for is about therapies and things like that don't have that big dollar amount. So I'm kind of wondering about what we're flirting with in terms of that, if we don't have a drug or something. And then I'm also wondering, what's come up with our small parent group is the idea of raising money for research versus raising money for patient advocacy and care and family support and those kind of things. And I'm wondering if there's any thoughts about that sort of balance.
Well, within the BDSRA, if you wanted to donate money, you can donate money for your specific type of disease, or you can donate money towards support and advocacy. So there is that. There are two different avenues that you can potentially donate your money in those ways. I would say that it's kind of amazing when if you put up a letter of intent for a research project and the amount is, say, $50,000, how close the research comes to that number. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge number. It could be, a smaller number. It doesn't have to be in the millions, depending upon what you want to try to accomplish, or what the scientist is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and just to give you an idea, so the Synodos projects are these multi-million-dollar projects, but there we also ask 12, 15 labs to come together. So if you divide that, it's not that big of a budget per lab. We also have investigator-initiated grant. This is, you have a great idea, you want to get funding. We have 3 kinds of them. One are called Young Investigator Awards, which are really, you have a great idea, but you don't know if it's going to be funded. There we fund up to $120,000 for a 2-year grant. The next one is what is called a Drug Discovery Initiative. That is, you have a crazy idea, you want to test a drug on a cell or in an animal quickly, and you want to know if that works, and then go to the NIH and the CDMRP to get the big dollars. Those are anywhere from $25,000 to $85,000. And then the third one is clinical research awards. We're not funding clinical trials because CTMRP is doing an awesome job, and the NCI as well. But what we do is we say, oh, okay, if there is that whole body imaging, that would be great to add up to that clinical trial because that would make that trial so much informative, but it's not within the strict budget of that clinical trial. That is then where CTF comes in and said, okay, we will add the $50,000 to add that extra thing that otherwise would not be done but could be really informative. So I think what I would advise you is try to discuss with your research community, where are those gaps? Where are those gaps that nobody wants to fund? Right? That, in fact, find the unsexy things that are essential, but nobody wants to put their money to it. And that is where smaller dollars can make a huge difference. It's kind of finding those gaps. But I would personally, what I would do is get a think tank together with some smart people that are in that disorder and think about that. What is that thing that would make a difference? I can put anywhere, this is the amount of dollar I can put on the table. Where do I make the biggest difference? That would be my approach to this.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate actually what you were just saying. I'm with the Choroideremia Research Foundation, and we found researchers that seem to be doing some extraordinary work on other eye diseases. And we said we would like to get in there, but we couldn't fund the millions of dollars that they were getting in grants. We came up with the idea of just buying them equipment,
yes,
whether it was incubators, cellular incubators or a microscope or any type of equipment. We started at the $20,000, $25,000 level,
yep,
$40,000 level, and they put a plaque on it, so whenever anybody was using it, they saw our name.
Exactly.
And that gave us a foot in the door that when they were looking to expand their research, we were then in a position that they knew of us.
Right. Fantastic.
This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for all the information. I guess it's sort of piggybacking off the original question about how to have funding priorities. In addition to the nuances and priorities that were mentioned, there's a session taking place during this conference on strategic planning, and it sounds like a strategic planning question of what does the board want, what do the researchers want, and deferring to the experts, but also making sure that a patient voice is there as well to talk about priorities, because we talk a lot about researcher priorities, and impact is very important, but the patients need to have a seat at the table.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hi, I'm Diana Campbell. I'm a survivor of leiomyosarcoma, 15-year, stage 4.
Good job.
Thank you. I'm also a lobby with Every Life Foundation, Sarcoma Foundation America. I would like to know, and I'm in New York City and New York State, and I'm talking about doing a caucus for New York State now and trying to find a group of other rare advocate groups but now it's about funding. Where are we going to get the fund and how? And what are the requirements? I mean, how many people you have to have in a group to start, or does it have to be a year? You have to be in business or have a foundation? What are the requirements? Are they very strict? And what is the maximum and the minimum?
What is the maximum what, sir?
Maximum and the minimum of the grants that you have for the... And do they all have to be for research?
No.
Because
No.
I'm looking at quality of life.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. No, absolutely not. So, for example, we spend about 20 to 30% of our money on developing educational materials, patient forum, patient symposia, all those kind of things that are clinic network, really that helps the patients directly. So I think it is absolutely not necessary that everything goes to research. And if you look at quality of life, there is a lot of, the FDA is begging to get quality of life measures that have been validated. So I think with, even with volunteers, I mean, if I see, I'm a European, as you can hear from my accent probably. One of the things that I've seen is the power of volunteers in the US. You guys have that community feeling that we Europeans can learn from. If I see the 150 volunteers that come together I can tell you that is like an atomic bomb for that weekend in that hotel. And I get goosebumps even when I talk about it. Because these people get stuff done that you cannot even dream about. And all these people, they do that for nothing. So I think the power of volunteers is absolutely amazing in this country. So this is why I'm here and why I'm staying, because it's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
I was curious, Annette, if you all are able to recoup any grant funding that you have made to a scientist who ends up commercializing some research, and or whether or not you have a policy where you could share in the license fees.
So we have what is called the patent policy, and I'm more than happy to share that with you, which is it's more soft. We're not that tough yet.
Okay. Do you envision it getting tougher?
Maybe. I don't know. I think we should never forget that our absolute first focus should be on getting treatments to our patients. If I see my patients, as long as I look at them and I can't bring a drug treatment to them, I feel like we fail. So our patients are what drives us. Well, of course, we also need to make sure that we sustain, because if we disappear, we can't do anything, right? So for us, it's really a balance between finding the money to sustain the stuff that we're doing versus making sure that the patients get what they need. And that is a ethical battle, that is a commercial battle. It's a battle, but it's a battle worth fighting.
I think we have time for one more question if we have another one.
So Annette can add to this, but I want to highlight one thing that she mentioned. With the Synodose programs, one of their requirements is collaboration. As a scientist, we don't do this naturally. So she said that these folks come together and collaborate. That is actually a structure that's put in place by CTF. So they set the grant priorities, people apply, and then they identify, here's the 3 leading groups that have put in applications in this area, and these 3 teams can be arch nemesis. They can be people who would never collaborate together, and CTF makes it a priority that if you're going to take funding from CTF, you will work together. So with our Synodose project, the company that we work with, the other Synodose project is their arch rival. And one of the requirements in going into this program was that we have to work together. And so it's expedited the science tremendously. We share protocols, we share all of our data across that. I've now actually taken that model and applied it to the Batten's disease work that we do with one of the Batten's disease foundations, and saying, bring together these fantastic scientists to work on the topics that you need, but part of the funding requirement is they have to work together. It's not an option, so they can't have siloed grants. They have to work together. So I don't know, Annette, if you want to comment on that more.
No, but it's true. But I think the amazing thing is that the researchers do it. Sometimes you need a little wine, but... No, but it's true. I mean, come on, this is hard. This is, you're used to do, and I was once at a J&J training where they said, is any one of you opposed to change? And everybody said, no. And then they said, okay, now tomorrow your partner decides to put the salt in the other cupboard. How would you feel about that? And it would be like, that's not logic. So everybody resisted. Well, this is the same. We have asked our research community to turn the whole thing upside down and share their data, their raw data in real time. So this is great for us to think about that, but this is great for the research community to actually do this. And the Jills of the situation are just amazing partners here, because they said, okay, we'll do it. It's not obvious, it's not ideal, it's sometimes difficult, but we'll go for it. And the patients play a very important role here, because it's, in fact, the patients are part of the Synodose teams. So it's the patient, when we kick off the first Synodose team, the patient starts by telling their story. And suddenly, as a scientist, you're not working on some kind of fancy scientific problem anymore. You're working on the problem of somebody who's standing in front of you. And it changes the whole energy in the room. We've seen the dynamics change, and people are willing to move mountains because there is a face to the problem.
So thank you, Tony and Annette. Let's give them one last round of applause for having a great presentation.